The Matrix Resurrections. I didn't like it. I didn't like this movie. I didn't like most things about it, down to just about every fine detail. I mean, I appreciate the cinematography of the movie. I think that some of it looks really, really great. I think that the effects artists who worked on the movie did a great job. They worked really hard and it shows. Other than that, I don't think I liked really a single thing about it, and it's a shame because I've heard people really enjoyed it. I've heard positive reviews from it from people who are very critical and have high standards, which is why it was surprising to me that I found it to be so amateurish in its script, and it was so poorly written that it was kind of unbelievable. I have a bunch of notes that I wrote down as I was watching it because it's the only thing to keep my mind occupied to stop the boring shittiness of the movie from overtaking my entire being. Oh, the editing of the movie is awful. I mean, the first part of the movie felt far more sporadic and disorienting than the latter half. I mean, all of the action sequences were completely disorienting and didn't have a sense of spatial awareness. So you were constantly confused as to what exactly was happening, or at least that was my experience with it. None of the action read in the way that I feel like it was supposed to. None of the action was interesting because none of it held any dramatic weight, for me anyway. I couldn't have given less of a about the movie. By the end, for the last I would say 30 minutes, I was just begging for it to be over sooner. I just wanted it to be over so that I could stop watching it and get to making this video. I don't like this new main character. Bugs is her name. Like the rabbit, she has like a line about it. Awful character, just super uninteresting. Her whole core, the whole core of her character is that she looked up one day as she's just some random window cleaner, I guess, just another person in the Matrix, and one day she looked up and she saw Neo, and it's even kind of ambiguous as to what happened that made her so amazed, and it's ambiguous as to what happened that makes her so enamored with Neo and so amazed by him. I don't understand what she is so motivated by. I don't understand her motivation. The thing to really mention is how the movie has this meta aspect
Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse.
To its creation, where Neo is sent back into the Matrix, and the Matrix exists within the universe of the story as a video game series that Neo supposedly created. Lana Wachowski uses this frame to vent her frustrations with feeling forced to make a sequel in the first place. It's apparent from the very unsubtle dialogue that this new Matrix movie was only made because if Lana didn't make it, the studio that owned the rights to the Matrix was going to make it without her. And so it's like, I understand that struggle and that conflict, and I understand that these studios are just greedy beyond belief and would have done something terrible to the story that ostensibly she cared about so much. But at the end of the day, I don't think that commentary added much to the universe of the Matrix. It felt more like a way for Lana to make excuses for why the movie exists. There's a very self-aware, and I make sure to use the air quotes when I say self-aware, aspect to this movie, because it's kind of got this Deadpool problem where, you know, like there's the part in Deadpool at the very end where it's like, and now we gotta have the big CG fight with the big scary monster because that's how every superhero movie goes. And it's like, well, just because you pointed out that it's a trope of superhero movies, just by referencing the fact that we're going along with the trope, doesn't really comment or act as satire, doesn't really add anything to the conversation about that cliche or that trope. Lana Wachowski was trying to have a lot of meta commentary about Hollywood and about these remakes and about how people are unable to appreciate originality and they're desperate for nostalgia and all these things. But at the end of the day, it feels incredibly ineffective in the way that it was implemented in this movie. Like, I feel like Lana Wachowski could have just given an interview and expressed the feelings that came across from the commentary of this movie in a better way. The movie just wasn't the greatest way to make these critiques, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, the movie completely capitulates to what these people were saying that it needed to be. Like, at the end of the day, it really is that very by the books remake. It's almost an exact remake of the original. Like, it's so reliant on the original for inspiration and for like getting people invested. You're meant to care about the things that are happening in this movie because of your investment from the previous movies, which is just my least favorite kind of sequel and most uninteresting kind of story in general. I didn't care about any of it. I just was so uninterested. Nothing held any dramatic weight for the entire time, and it was entirely because of how it was written. As much as I respect that Lana Wachowski has these problems with Hollywood and the film studio executives and these different things, at the end of the day, I don't think that she made a movie that was counter the things that she was complaining about. In fact, I think that it has precisely the problems that the movie references. The movie even talks about, like, how doesn't it feel pointless to all of the previous movies now feel pointless because it's all just back again and it's all just the same. And it's like, yeah, that's 100% true. It's 100% true. And now none of it mattered, or at least it feels that way if you buy into this new movie. They make that comment as though they're trying to rise above that idea, that trend of just retconning the old achievements, starting everything over so that you can have a new series and start fresh, but it makes it feel like all the old accomplishments were meaningless. And it's the same thing with this movie. I mean, I can tell that they tried to do some things to make it feel like it wasn't meaningless, but it just didn't work. The red pill, blue pill scene is a great example of how they're rehashing the old material and trying to make it seem like they're being meta or commenting on it or changing it in some valuable and unique way. But at the end of the day, they're not, and just making a less interesting, less well executed version of the story that they made before. There's also a shocking amount of bad effects in the movie. Like, for the most part, there's a lot of great effects work, and I won't go after the effects artists who worked really hard on this movie. It's apparent they worked hard on it, and a lot of it looks really great, but there are some bad effects in the movie, and it really stands out, and it is very noticeable. Even some of the stuff just looks newer instead of looking better, if you know what I mean. It looks like it was made with better technology, but not created with the same care and passion. There's so many scenes that are like this, but there's a scene towards the beginning where Neo meets up with this older lady character. I forget what her name is, who cares? But she is a character from the older Matrix movies, ostensibly. I don't even remember the character, but she's in this movie and she's like a central figure in the movie, and you're really meant to get invested in the conflict between her and all of the other freedom fighters because she's their general. But she's a terrible character who doesn't feel rooted in any kind of character-defining conflict or desire or anything like that. I mean, they kind of give her a little bit of something with she's into making plants. She's into creating strawberries and other fruits for people, and I get that's something, I guess, but it was just not a very interesting character. And I feel like the way you were meant to get invested in it was by recognizing her from the old movies, and I didn't even recognize her. I've seen the old movies, I just didn't care. There was one line in the movie that I really, really liked that had that meta quality, that referencing the Matrix's impact on the world, or maybe it was just kind of talking about the world in general right now. But the line was, "Sometimes it feels like the Matrix won." And I really liked that. I liked thinking about what that line implies about the world that I live in.
All right, perfect.
Boy.
Oh, hey, Mark. Hey, what's going on?
Hi. Yeah.
Ay, what's the weird girl? Yeah.
Immediately, this line that got me thinking, I was like, ooh, I really like that. Immediately, it's completely undercut by this awful joke by this character who's like, can you fly or could you fly? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, cool. It wasn't funny or anything, it just made me stop enjoying the one tiny thing I was enjoying about it. There's a whole subplot about putting Neo in jail because of this general character. It is extremely contrived and disappears immediately from the plot. It's as if there was no point in putting it in the movie. It's a conflict that happens, and then within literally like less than a minute, it's completely resolved and it didn't matter. Because the crew comes and helps him on his mission, but there's no reason why. They never established a reason why. And they even, I guess, understood that they didn't because they had to shoehorn in a line to try and retroactively give them a reason to be helping him. It was something like, they're helping because they want to get out of the doghouse with the general. That somehow making him happy wouldn't put them on good terms with this general character. And none of that was ever established, none of that was ever shown. It was never made clear why that would be important to any of these people. None of the motivations are clear. This is the thing that drove me so crazy about this movie, is that there's so much that I could have appreciated, wanted to appreciate. I was really rooting for it to be good. I have close friends who really, really enjoyed it, and I wanted to share in on that with them. But for the most part, it was just so badly written that I couldn't get into any of it. I think this script is maybe the worst of any of the Matrix movies so far. It's so self-referential, it borders on masturbatory with talking about itself. It is just constantly bringing in this meta self-analysis of the Matrix and of the impact of the story, and it is so distracting from the narrative that you're supposed to care about, but I couldn't care less about if I tried. I tried so hard to get invested in the narrative, and there's very little to go on if you're not bought into the nostalgia of it completely. And hey, maybe for people, again, I've heard positive reviews of this from some people, so maybe there's a pathway. If you're a huge fan of The Matrix, there's a movie here to be enjoyed for someone like you. But for someone like me, who was just constantly questioning the motivations of the characters and was upset by the lack of dramatic weight to anything. Nothing felt like it wasn't dramatic. And so I thought, okay, maybe it could be funny or interesting. I wasn't laughing and I wasn't super interested. So it not being dramatic was a huge problem for me and made it not very worth watching. There's this character that they call exiles. There's these characters that are exiles. I didn't understand what that was or what that meant. I feel like that's probably some kind of deep Matrix lore thing for the hardcore fans that I don't know anything about. And it was just completely confusing and uninteresting for me. One of the exiles is this like old boomer character who is just ranting about remakes or movies. Like it's supposed to be, again, some kind of meta commentary, but it was just boring and uninteresting and baffling. Oh gosh, this new Agent Smith is awful. Not even close to the caliber of performance that the original Agent Smith brought to the role. What's his name? Hugo Weaving? I think that's his name. He was fantastic as Agent Smith. And in this movie, you're supposed to, I guess, care about this new Agent Smith because he is also the old Agent Smith. Again, there's no reason to care about anything in this movie unless you're already invested from the old movies. And the worst example is this Agent Smith character. He's given nothing the entire movie. And the ending with this character is completely baffling, makes no sense. Or maybe it makes some kind of sense to certain people. It made no emotional sense to me in the context of the movie. There's a line about bullet time, about how Neo... it was Neil Patrick Harris was talking about bullet time. He mentioned that, and it's like, that's a filmmaking term. That wasn't even a term that was in The Matrix. They brought it in a way that, I mean, I guess you could say that bullet time could be something that's in the world of The Matrix, but the problem was that Neil Patrick Harris said, this is the thing that's defined you. And it's like, that's only true from this meta perspective where, yeah, bullet time did define The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, but the character Neo has never had any kind of relationship to bullet time, or no one ever even mentioned it to him. The worst thing that they did in the entire movie was at the setup for the third act, they brought in a new character that was apparently like some minor extra child actor from the original Matrix who was grown up. They cast her in the movie, I guess, as some kind of reference to the old movies. But again, you didn't have any reason to care about this character or any definable quality to this character. And yet, she's like central to the conclusion of the story. The whole plan for how to fix all of the problems comes from this character who shows up out of nowhere and isn't defined, or no one cares about this character the entire time. They're just like a Deus Ex Machina character that's written to give the main characters a solution to their problem, and it's horrible and I hate it. So they do try to give this character a motivation, but the motivation is literally just a line of dialogue where she's talking to another character who nobody gives a shit about, and she says, "My parents died, and so I will do anything for this cause." It's just so lazy. I've been critiquing this movie very, very harshly and talking a lot about the things that I didn't like about the movie, because there are many things that I didn't like about it, but I'll say very quickly the positive things. Some of the cinematography is really great. Some of the CGI and special effects work is really great. A lot of the acting is really great and done by professionals who know what they're doing and can make even crappy lines of dialogue sound more compelling. I also enjoyed some of the commentary, some of this meta commentary. It felt like it was trying to go for like a Charlie Kaufman kind of thing, and if it had been executed better, I would have appreciated the content of the message that was being offered by the movie. So that's a positive, I guess. But the problem is that it's completely hypocritical, because it does everything that it's saying is wrong about these new Hollywood remakes, and then just does it. Almost, it's like shameless. But I was supposed to be talking about positives, other positives. But that's really all the positive things that I have to say about it, because for the most part, I just thought it was not very good. In terms of recommendation, if you're super invested in the lore of the Matrix world, there's going to be more stuff for you to enjoy. There's going to be new details for you to appreciate, all those kinds of things. So go ahead and see it. If you're a more critical fan and a more critical follower of the world of the Matrix, you might actually be very disappointed by this movie. I don't know. I haven't talked to many hardcore Matrix fans about this. Yeah, apart from that person or a very uncritical audience member who just wants some CGI action in their face, apart from those two kinds of people, I wouldn't recommend this movie to anybody. You're not going to miss much if you skip it. If you've seen the original Matrix, you got a stronger version of all the feelings that this movie tries to offer. This movie, the closest it gets to any kinds of feelings are related to and stolen from the old movies. So I wouldn't recommend this movie. Just go watch the old one again. It's way better and you'll get more out of it. All that being said, I'm going to plug this movie into my patented special 1 out of 10 rating scale that I invented. I'm going to give The Matrix Resurrections a 3.5 out of 10. I didn't like it. I think it's not very good. No offense to any of the hardworking professionals who worked on it. I respect you guys, and I'm sure all of you are capable of good work. I myself want to make movies. I'm sure I'll make a worse movie than this at some point in my life. But I just gotta be honest, I was not a huge fan of it. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I mean, those are my thoughts on the movie. I just saw it recently, so my opinions could change about it. I'm always open-minded. Feel free to share your thoughts and opinions about the movie in the comments below, and subscribe if you want to hear me ramble about more shit. But that's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching. See ya.